I'm Ernie Humphrey, Educational Programs Leader for Performative, the largest online community for corporate finance, accounting, treasury, and related professionals. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's webinar, Incentive Compensation, Leveraging Technology to Deliver Best Practices and Mitigate Risk Exposures. Incentive compensation plans that miss the mark can derail the acquisition and retention of the talent needed to drive company success. Furthermore, compensation plans managed in Excel can cause company compensation mistakes that cost them tens of thousands of dollars every year, if not more, and impact company profitability. Today we will learn how companies are leveraging Xactly Incent Express to optimize their significant investments in sales commissions and incentives. I would like to thank Xactly, whose commitment to thought leadership helps us make this webinar possible and deliver at no cost. A quick note on today's agenda. First, we'll hear a joint presentation from our featured speakers. They'll move to the interactive Q&A session where we will spend the remainder of our hour. We'd like this to be an interactive experience for you, so if you have any questions at any time, please go to the questions area and you go to Webinar Control Panel and send us your questions. We can't promise to get all of them in, but we will do our best and we'll follow up afterwards with any questions we did not get to. A few logistical notes about the webinar. A link to today's presentation and video recording of the webinar we sent out to all event attendees within 24 hours of the event. Please note today's webinar does include a tech demo and as such is not eligible for CPE credit. Again, we encourage you to ask questions on today's topic via the questions box in your GoToWebinar control panel at any time during the webinar. Finally, you'll be asked to take a short survey today regarding the webinar. We greatly appreciate your feedback regarding our event today. Performative connects corporate finance leaders to provide instant advice and insights on the tough financial and strategic challenges they face every day. Let's get started by introducing today's featured speakers. Mitch Yanez, Solutions Consultant, Xactly. Mitch has been with Xactly for the past 3 years, working in a few different roles, ranging from services and implementation to pre-sale solutions consultant. He has implemented hundreds of different compensation plans and consulted with hundreds of different companies in both emerging and enterprise markets. As a solutions consultant, he now focuses on helping companies evaluate better ways to process commissions and incent right using his product knowledge of the Xactly solutions. Our other featured speaker is Jim Chittister, Director of Product Marketing, Xactly. Over the past 20 years, Jim has helped companies of all sizes and industries improve their performance by leveraging innovative technology solutions. He has worked with product teams from cutting-edge market leaders like FedEx and Intuit to develop technologies designed to help companies thrive. As a Director of Product Marketing at Xactly Corporation, he now helps companies take control of their incentive compensation, inspire performance, and incent right with Xactly's best-of-breed product suite used by sales and finance executives, compensation analysts, sales commission operations, and sales professionals across a variety of industries ranging from SMBs to large enterprises. With that, it is my distinct pleasure to hand the floor over to Jim Chittister at Xactly. Jim, please take it away for us. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks a lot, Ernie. We appreciate it. Appreciate the introduction. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And Mitch is our product guru, so I'm just going to give you kind of the overview and kind of some of the things that we at Xactly the pains we try and help companies solve. And then Mitch is going to do a very thorough and excellent job of taking you through how our our Incent Express offering works and show you really in tangible ways how we solve those problems with our offering. So a little bit about the agenda today that we want to help you guys learn some new things, hopefully, and then see our product in action. But first we're going to talk about some of the pains and the impacts of incentive compensation in Excel. Then we're going to talk about Incent Express and how we believe it's a better alternative to spreadsheets. We'll talk about how most companies still use spreadsheets and how we think there's a better way to do that. And then the main guts of the presentation today, the webinar today, Mitch is going to take us through the product tour. He's going to talk about take us from step one all the way through the finish, which is going from building an incentive compensation plan to managing that plan, which is a lot of the process and a lot of the pains, to getting visibility to all the people that's important to get visibility to on incentive compensation. Lastly, we'll talk a little bit about us at Xactly and give you a little more detail about the company, and then we will hand it back to Ernie, and Ernie will take us through a Q&A session. So again, Ernie mentioned it once. If you have any questions that you want answered as we go through it, we'd love to get them. We find these sessions are most beneficial when we have a lot of interaction with the folks in the participating, so we'd love to get your feedback. So with that, so what are the big pains in running incentive compensation? I think, and if you're sitting on the webinar today, you've probably experienced this at some level. Like I said before, most companies, believe it or not, are still using 30-year-old technology, Excel spreadsheets, to manage what is a very important aspect of an investment in terms of driving performance for their overall company objectives. So about 70%, a recent study was done by a company called CSO Insights. They found that about 70% of all companies, doesn't matter what size you are, but all companies manage their incentive compensation in Excel spreadsheets. So at the same time, most CFOs, another study done where a lot of CFOs, most CFOs, about 60%, 68%, say they manage integration of their data in Excel spreadsheets as well. So you see this problem happening where you have a very important part of running your business, an investment, a significant investment, between 10 and 15% of gross revenues for most companies. And what you've created is a very heavily manual process, whether it comes from doing anything from gathering data from your CRM system and your ERP system, which are often both have information in them that you need to calculate and process incentive compensation, taking that and putting them in spreadsheets and making sure those spreadsheets are right. So you've got a heavily manual process, first of all. That's one of the big pains. It takes a lot of your valuable time from folks who can be spending their time not on processes but on driving your company forward, and instead they're managing the process. Secondly, it's very error-ridden. So Gartner did a survey where they found that up to about 8% of incentive compensation that's done in Excel spreadsheets is wrong. And on the downside, if you have a sales rep where you calculate incentive compensation wrong and it's to their benefit, you'll never hear about it. If you do it incorrectly to their detriment, then you'll definitely hear about it. So with all the data collection and all the managing of different formulas and different products and different sales reps and different regions that all are a part of developing and managing and processing incentive compensation, there are lots of potential for errors, especially when you're using Excel spreadsheets to kind of process all those things. And lastly, the reports. Again, if all your information is in Excel, then all those reports are in Excel. And if your folks, whether they be a sales leader who wants to know how a particular rep is doing, or a rep wants to know how well they're doing against a particular quota, or how close they are to attaining a quota, or even forward-looking, see how much money am I going to make from a certain deal, either if you're on the end of managing that, then you're going to have to run reports for them, or what's happening is they're running their own reports, what we call shadow accounting. So instead of selling, your reps are doing accounting work, and if they put it onto the sales operations or the finance team, then they're spending their time running reports. Typically that report is in having old data, not up-to-the-minute data, so that doesn't even mean that the report is right or accurate. So you've got these kind of three big chunks or three big categories of pains that you're running into as you do sales and incentive comp. And if you're doing it monthly, then it's monthly or quarterly. Typically, most companies are doing them either monthly or quarterly. So this is something that is ongoing. The other thing we don't kind of identify here, but becomes a big issue, is most of the companies that we talk to, they're growing rapidly. So take what you're doing today and then project out 2 or 3 years. Imagine how many more products you'll have, how many more people you'll have, how many more incentive compensation plans you may have. You may just have a sales rep now, but down the road, maybe you have a account development rep that helps the sales rep find the leads, and they need to be compensated on that. Or you have a highly technical product, and you have a solutions consultant like we have Mitch that helps you basically in the pre-sales area, where it really takes a prospect through the product and helps them understand the product. They have to be compensated on it. So not only is this problem a problem now, but it gets exponentially worse as your company grows, and I'm sure you all are going to be successful and your companies will grow, so that problem doesn't go away, it just gets worse. So with that, let's talk a little bit about what that impact is on your incentive compensation. And there is, in the United States and North America, about, believe it or not, about $800 billion invested every year in incentive compensation plans. That compares to about $300 million for advertising. Now, if you think about that, and as you're sitting there going, okay, if I did let's say, and I said before, about 10% of companies, or about 10% of gross revenues are spent, between 10 and 15% are spent on incentive compensation. Now, if you're, let's say, $100 million, let's make it easy. If you're a $10 million company, that's $1 million. Now, would you buy an ad or pay-per-click and not figure out how well it's doing? Well, a lot of companies, because they're managing the process and not understanding where that incentive is working and where it's not working, they wind up getting a poor return on that incentive compensation. The whole idea of incenting your reps and incenting your sales teams to perform is to generate more, overall company objectives, whether they be generating more revenue, generating more profitability, getting a new product launched out in the marketplace and having it be successful. Whatever it is that your company decides to do, then if you're managing the process, you're not keeping track of how well that incentive compensation is working. So what you're getting is a poor return on your incentive compensation, which, like I said, is a pretty significant investment for most companies using incentive compensation. You're wasting time and resources of your folks on your finance team or your sales operations team and your sales team. So like I talked about before, you have sales reps that will be doing shadow accounting instead of doing selling. You'll have sales operations or finance team members who, instead of understanding and analyzing where the incentive compensation could be leveraged better or whether it's working or not, they're managing that process. So you're paying people to basically manage process that can easily be done with technology simply because you're using spreadsheets that don't help solve this problem very easily. One of the ones that we hear most of all from our finance teams that talk to us, our prospects and our existing customers, is that risk that comes from being wrong. So not only are you taking, I talked a little bit about wasting time, you're also spending more time closing your books at the end of the month because you have to make sure that this stuff is accurate. What the goal should be is highly accurate and close quickly. Well, what we find when folks come to us and companies come to us, what they're saying is, I don't want to have an accrual, my incentive compensation accrual, be wrong yet again. Because if I'm wrong, then I have to go to my board and say I screwed it up. If you're a public company, then you have to restate your earnings. Nothing that the finance team or CFO wants less than having to do that, because you start, it's a huge risk in terms of taking a hit to your statements. You have to do the restatement and you lose credibility. So that's the impact of managing. We talked about the Excel spreadsheets. What if you get something wrong? What if you get an error? There's plenty of companies out there with stories about, hey, I missed and I was not able to figure out what my accrual was going to be. I certainly couldn't figure out in a timely manner, and it was wrong, and I had to restate my earnings. And then lastly, again, the whole idea is you're incentivizing your sales team to perform to achieve some type of company objective. Well, if you don't know whether it's working or not, and the salespeople don't have clarity into, hey, am I achieving my goal? Or if I sell this type of product, what's my commission going to be? How's it going to help me towards attaining my overall goal so that I can achieve things like President's Club? Again, if the information is stuck in a spreadsheet, regardless if it's right or wrong, and sales has no insight into it, or if they don't find out until after the month is closed or after the quarter is closed, it's really not going to help. That goes back to that poor return on incentive compensation. It's really not going to help your company achieve the objectives of having the incentive compensation in the first place. So you've got these four hugely negative impacts that come with, and the overarching theme there is you're losing control of your incentive compensation. You don't know how well it's doing. You have your team members working on the process as opposed to really analyzing and understanding how the business is doing. You have huge risks. If you're a public company and you state something wrong, you've got to go back and make those restatements. Even if you're private, you still have to go back and do that. And then lastly, you're spending money investing in sales performance that the sales team may not even know whether it's working or not. So it's this overall loss of control, primarily driven by using spreadsheets and basically 30, 40-year-old technology on something that can easily be solved with new technology. And like I said before, you just want to make sure that when you're making this investment that is driving overall company objectives. So you obviously have an objective, and you want to make sure you keep that objective moving forward and don't lose control of that investment. So now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how we feel Express beats that spreadsheet problem and really try and help companies and finance teams and sales operations teams take control over their incentive compensation instead of incentive compensation controlling them, which, like we say, when somebody comes to us and they've kind of just had it, that's what they feel like. They feel like, hey, this process is out of control. I don't know if my accrual is right. I can't see into the future. I have to do a lot of manual tasks to make sure I get the thing in place, and I'm getting pushed to close the books at the end of the month or at the end of the quarter, and I can't do it on time. I got to get my payroll set so that I can pay the reps on their incentive compensation. One of the things we didn't go over is it's better, obviously, to reinforce that incentive compensation behavior by paying the reps as soon as possible once they achieve those objectives. Well, if you're figuring out the information and closing the books late and getting the information to payroll later, then that just doesn't help inspire and motivate that performance. So with that said, let's take some of those processes that that do kind of feel out of control if you're using spreadsheets. So one is just gathering the data. So as part of managing this process, you're doing exports of CSV files, you're getting information from your ERP system, from your CRM system, and then manipulating that data so that you come up with an answer. And you're changing formulas, you're inserting rows, you're doing vertical lookups and horizontal lookups and making sure I mean, we've seen some amazing formulas that people built. But I will say one thing, when people come to us, we have not seen, and Mitch is in this every day, we have not seen, it's almost 100% that customers come to us with an error in one of their spreadsheets. Because we see them, they help us. We need to see those to help construct and configure that incentive compensation plan in Express, and so we see them, and almost 100% of the time, let's say 99.9% of the time, we find an error in those spreadsheets. So getting that data and manipulating that data, doing that in spreadsheets, causing an error. With our system, you can integrate with CRM and ERP data. We are built on the Force.com platform, so we're seamlessly integrated with Salesforce. Most of our customers use Salesforce as their CRM, and you have ERP data that you can get in. So there's ways to configure so that you can take that information with a click of a button or running of a file. You've got all that information. You don't have to gather it into different spreadsheets and then load it into an overall spreadsheet. So that's one way that we help take control of that process. Secondly, running reports. Again, if you're in sales operations or finance and you have a sales rep or a sales manager breathing down your neck saying, hey, I want to understand how we're doing in this particular area, you have to create and recreate and redistribute and distribute reports. You're using email. You don't know if the file's the most recent version, and you don't know if the data is up to date. With Express, we solved that problem because your information's in the cloud. The information is available anytime, anywhere. So a rep can look it up on their computer when they're at their desk. They can look it up on their iPad if they're out in the field. They can look it up anywhere. They can get that information anywhere. If a sales manager wants to understand how a rep is doing, and again, Mitch is going to take you through all this so you can see it in action, but you can get that information anytime you want, and it's available anywhere. So again, you're not running reports. Your reps are selling instead of running reports, and they have the information available to them. We talked about making sure they have that visibility so that they can perform against that investment of incentive compensation. Timing. Again, we talked about how hard it is to close the books and get that incentive compensation accurate and up to date. And there's many times where you can have data out of date until there's manual input in there. Because we are on the cloud and we're seamlessly integrated with something, let's say, like with Salesforce, you can get that information in real time. So when let's say you're using an opportunity to base your incentive compensation off of, there's an opportunity that there was one in Salesforce. That information is always there, up to date. So that information is in real time. You don't have to worry whether the information is old or not. And then lastly is processing. So again, one of the big reasons that errors occur and there's so much time spent on managing incentive compensation when you're using spreadsheets is the manual calculations have to be updated. Maybe you have a new product in there. Maybe you have a new region. Maybe you have a change of region. Maybe you have a change of a rep. You have an additional rep. Processing this and changing the formula, making sure the formula is right, just consumes time and really doesn't even ensure that that information is actually going to be right. So the way we configure it, and Mitch will take you through this, is we have your plan is already set up. You draw on the information, you do a one-click calculation, and you can verify it, and you've got your incentive compensation process. So at the end of the day, the whole idea is to mitigate and reduce that risk, get that control back, cut the wasted energy and time that your resources could be used better spent on something else, and then get visibility to everybody, whether it be the executive team, sales leaders, sales reps, or the finance guys. So everybody has visibility into this. They can see the information. Again, they can see it anytime, anywhere, and that solves those problems. So that's how we feel Express beats the spreadsheet process of managing incentive compensation. So now with that, with that setup, I'm going to hand it over to Mitch Yanez, who is, again, our solutions consultant and our expert on Express. And he's going to take you through a few things. Again, kind of the whole process from soup to nuts. Building an incentive compensation plan, managing that sales compensation plan, and then how do you do the reporting. And then once we do that, we'll come back to this. But Mitch, I'm going to hand it over to you now, and you can take over.
Great. Thanks, Jim. So let's take a step out of the spreadsheet here, and let's jump over into the actual application. We're going to walk through, as Jim mentioned, the Xactly Express product, Incent Express. And it's really, as a little bit of background on Express itself, Jim had mentioned that we're built natively to the Force.com platform, which means that, most of our customers utilizing Salesforce CRM can natively bring over detail. There are logins for standalone customers outside of that CRM world if you're using, outside CRMs that are not Salesforce. So keep that in mind as we're walking through this. But the main interactions that we're going to walk you through today are going to be focused heavily on administration, how we build out your system, how we build out your compensation plans, how we might process the data, gather that information, all the things that Jim touched on earlier. And we'll talk a little bit about visibility, showing you how your reps can see what information they're being calculated on. Also, what types of breakdowns and gauges and visibility to spiffs and different contests can they see. And then we'll touch on heavily on what type of reporting is available from all this information that we're bringing into the tool. So with that said, the screen that you're looking at here is the Xactly Express home screen for an administrator. There's a few really key components that admins go through on a day-to-day or in a day-to-day process. From their world or their perspective, there's the idea of setting up a tool, right? Adding users to the system, customizing any settings. This is, in our world, kind of more of a one-time setup. Of course, if you need to add users as you grow with the company, it's very easy to do that. Express was designed for a business user, so anything that you're going to do within the tool is done through a simple interface, point and click. There is absolutely no coding involved when you have to go through and modify rules or add users, so keep that in mind too. The next piece that really an administrator might focus in on is managing compensation plans, right? Writing new rules. If you have to make a change 6 months down the line after using Xactly, where do you go and do that? So in this screen here, in this section, I want to walk you through two primary examples that we see on a day-to-day basis when it comes to compensation plans and changes and how that really differentiates us between the Excel processing world. And then lastly, we'll touch on, from an administrative perspective, how to calculate these things, right? We've already built out the plans. How do we gather the data? How do we process? And what type of audit trails can we leave with an automated system? So we'll touch on all of that there. So to start, let's focus in on the compensation plans. Now, again, we're looking at this from an administration perspective. At the compensation plan level, really what we've designed within the Xactly Express tool is a wizard-based setup process. And what you get from that is step-by-step and question and answer. You'll notice that at the top of my screen, I'm focusing in on steps 1 through 5. And then I'm asking questions to determine the best way to build out your plan. What is the name of the users on the plan? What are the effective dates that it's operating on? What type of payments are we showing? But ultimately, what we do is break it out into 3 basic areas. So you can really think about plans in our world as really defining out what we call quotas, targets, or goals that you'll set for your sales reps or individuals. Some companies have these, most do, others don't. So if you don't have targets, don't worry too much. The next piece is really defining out how we associate credit for the given individual. It's also how we differentiate between types of sales. So a lot of times what we'll see is companies compensating in one particular way for one sale. But they would like to get a little bit more complex. The only problem is it's really hard to manage all of that in their Excel spreadsheets. So what we've developed is a really robust crediting engine that allows you to differentiate between types of sales. In this example, I'm showing products versus services, and we can pay different rates based upon those. We can even have different pay schedules. We can have different rate schedules, and we'll talk about all that. But that's really the idea of the crediting section. So I'll walk through an example here in a second. And then the payments world, it's just associating those rates, right? Giving a commission rate, giving a bonus payout, giving a contest credit, whatever it is that you're compensating your sales team on, we handle that here in the payment section. So I'll walk through an example there as well. But the first example that I want to go through today is the idea that you, sometime in calculating your compensation have come across, I'm sure, where you have, one of your reps has made a sale, an order has been processed, a transaction comes in, and you need to credit different individuals on that one sale. An example might be the outside rep closes it, and the outside rep manager might be getting a little bit of credit. Maybe the vice president of sales also gets credit based upon that one sale. And then maybe it might be the fact that you have a lead generation team who pass that lead to the outside rep. And then if you are in the software industry, as Jim mentioned, you have some sort of technical sales consultant, they can come in and assist on the deal. So from that perspective, you might have 4 to 5 different people getting credit on one transaction. In an Excel world, that's pretty difficult to manage. You might see that on different spreadsheets. There's different formulas. There's different processes in place for how those transactions are paid out. And it can become pretty cumbersome just to handle one transaction across all of those different spreadsheets. So inside Express, what we thought up was being able to tie that source of credit appropriately is huge. And so what you're seeing here on the screen is just that. And this is all done through this easy user interface. So some of those types of credit that we're talking about, obviously the most common is that direct type credit. If I'm the outside rep, for example, anything I sell, I get credit for. But perhaps on the manager's perspective, or from the manager's perspective, they are not selling anything on their own, but rather they're selling, or they're influencing the sale by helping out, assisting their subordinates. So in that case, we're going to give them what we call roll-up credit. Might be referred to as overlay credit. This is something that, because we're native to Salesforce.com, we leverage the Force.com hierarchy. So if you manage your hierarchy today, this is a one-click setup in our system. Obviously, for those not using Salesforce, we have an option directly within the tool. It's called team-based crediting. Allows you to build out those rules on your own. And then if you want to get heavily customizable and you wanted to go and credit your sales team, not necessarily based off of the person that sold the transaction or the order or the sale, but maybe it's more focused in on the region of the sale or the territory that the deal was sold in, or perhaps even to a specific account. We've seen this type of deal-based crediting, as we call it, quite a bit. At least 1 or 2 roles within an organization might be influencing this way. So keep this in mind, is being able to write these rules just through a point-and-click interface. And so this kind of steps away from the concept of having to go in and keep different spreadsheets. Instead, you can set up different compensation plans right within our tool here. You might have one plan for your enterprise team. You might have a second plan for your managers. You might have a third plan for your business development reps and so forth, and we can go on and on. Each one of these might have a simple credit rule associated. So this is where we're really starting to take all of those different rules and encompass them into one main area. And if you need to adjust, it's done through this interface. So if there's any questions on this piece or crediting or anything along those lines, feel free to shoot that into the questions box, and we can approach that at the end of the webinar. But that's really the first stage of examples that I wanted to cover off on, which was really crediting and how we associate credit to a transaction sold. The second is going to be talking a little bit about how we pay that out. Right now that we've given credit to the outside rep and we've given credit to the sales manager, maybe those 2 individuals have different rates. Maybe they have different rate schedules. Maybe they have different payment terms. And so that's defined here on the payment section. You'll notice that the interface, as I mentioned earlier, is just asking me questions. One of the questions that I'm asking is, how do I want to pay? Or, for example, if I'm a manager that gets bonuses versus commission, I can select that and I can set up that structure. So in this column here in section B, you're seeing that I can determine whether I want to pay a percentage rate per transaction. I can even pay a flat amount per transaction. A good example here would be if you're paying, maybe $100 per lead passed by your business development team, or maybe you want to pay your account executives $100 or $1,000 for every new logo closed. Whatever the concept may be, the structure is the same. And then, of course, there's that one-time bonus spiff lump sum payout that we can, that might be something referring to if you hit a quarterly bonus, if you hit a monthly bonus, you're paid out $1,000, whatever the structure may be. You can even go as far as creating non-cash incentive spiffs that might be referring to a contest that relates to, top performance. If you're a top performer, you get an iPad. If you're the top performing rep of the year, maybe you get to go on a trip somewhere. The options are endless when you come about thinking up these different types of contests. But the idea is here, it's very easy to choose what you want to pay. In my example that I'm going to walk through today, I'm going through a percentage rate per transaction. So every deal closed by my outside rep, we're going to associate a percentage rate to that. As I scroll down, one of the biggest things that we see our customers wanting to do is create more complex rules when it comes to paying out. A lot of times they pay flat rates, right? It's simple. When it comes to calculations, you close a new business deal, you get 5%. Of course, they'd want to throw in accelerators and more incentives to keep selling, but it's just really hard to manage. So as companies grow, we start to see, these structures become more complex. And this is a good example of how this type of a system can really help you with that. What you're seeing here is in this example, I pay reps from 0 to 100% of their quota, a flat rate of 2.5%. As soon as that 100% goal is hit, we're going to start incrementally paying a higher rate on everything above that quota. That would be called accelerators, right? Accelerated rates at 4%. And then, of course, at 150% of quota, the next highest rate, you're going to get the higher rate. So this is an idea of an accelerated rate tier. You might already be familiar with this in your Excel spreadsheets and use some crazy formulas to get this calculation done accurately. But the idea here is that what happens when, 6 months into this compensation plan, your CFO calls you up and says, you know what, I need another accelerator added on for my outside rep plan. Well, if that's the case, and if you're a comp administrator, you got to go into your spreadsheets and make those adjustments and pray that nothing happens to the calculations from prior months. Well, within this system, we run on a month-by-month or period-by-period basis, and everything's locked down. So if you need to make any plan changes and, for example, add in that new accelerator, all you have to do is come to that specific plan, select one button, the Add Field option here, add in your new tier, let's say at 200% of goal. I want to say, the reps will now earn 7% commission. Well, something like that was done to everyone on the outside sales rep plan and just through a few clicks. I don't have to go through and find every individual spreadsheet, modify that spreadsheet, make sure nothing happened to the prior months. I know from this system perspective everything is locked down, so that change is only affecting this month. So that's just one example of how easy it is to make a change within the system and how scalable it can be, right? If you need to make changes to rates across your entire plan, we can allow you to do that. You can select the individual and modify the rates per person, keeping the same structure. So this is really just a few examples of how we can leverage the Express engine and wizard-based setup to really write in very easily structured rules to pay out more complex compensation structures without having to go in and worry about changes made to your spreadsheet. So if there's any questions on this piece regarding setup of your compensation plans, anything regarding crediting or payments, please let us know. We can definitely come back to that at the end of the webinar. But the next piece I wanted to talk to from an administration perspective is processing. From an admin's point of view, compensating or changing the compensation plan is something that might come up once, or maybe just once a month or once a quarter. But what you might deal with on a more consistent basis is actually running your calculations, right? Some companies out there want to do it multiple times a day. Some want to do it once a week. Some want to do it just once a month. But if we are doing it on a daily basis, which we see most commonly, there's a process behind that. It all starts with gathering the appropriate data. Jim had touched on this a little bit earlier, but with Xactly Express, gathering that data can be as easy as clicking a button. What I'm pulling up here is the first step, and again, another wizard-based process that walks me through processing from an administrative perspective. Now, I'd mentioned that we're built native to Salesforce.com, so if you are using Salesforce out there and there is any data that's living within that CRM system, we can natively pull that over just through the click of this button. What we'll do for you is during our implementation of the tool, we'll set up a data mapping to wherever your data lives in any standard or custom object in Salesforce to pull that over. Your process would be to click this button. Now, if you aren't using Salesforce, your data is not in Salesforce, or you just don't know Salesforce at all, we can get data from any system just through a CSV upload. And that essentially imports the data from your file, your source system, and brings it over into our system. And now all of that data will live and breathe within Xactly Express. And from that perspective, as an administrator, you can come in and see what we've gathered, right? What we've imported. You don't have to necessarily come to this screen as a process for processing your actual calculations, but it does give you a good look as to what kind of data we're showing. Obviously, you can edit any of this information if you need to. You can even create different views to show you different types of sales that you might want to be seeing. You can sort any of this information. Anything that you touch in here will not affect your source system. This is all data that's living and breathing inside Xactly Express. So I show you this just to give you an idea that when we calculate data, when we calculate your compensation, we want the most clean data possible, right? As long as we're processing accurate information, the less results that we're going to have to go through and review. So from that perspective, the pre-calculated data that you're seeing now is going to move on to the third step, which is processing the calculation. Now, all that's happening in this step, and the reason I show you the screen, is we're taking the compensation rules that I showed you earlier, and we're pushing them against that raw data. All we have to do is process and click one button. You don't necessarily have to go in and export your data from your system, cut and paste it, and modify it into your appropriate spreadsheets, and then hope and pray and cross your fingers that your formulas run right. Right? All that information is done just through the click of this button, at which point you now have the ability to review that data. So the screen that we're going to here, which is what we call Manage Results, is the first look that an administrator will have to what the calculations are within the tool. This is going to break down everything by rep. So if you want to drill into the detail behind any specific payout, it's easy to do that. All you have to do is select the line item for that given rep, and that'll populate the payment details. Now, I'll show you in a little bit about more on the side of reporting and talking about how we can get more visibility around this. But within Xactly Express, this is your real first look at detail. So I've selected here, for example, Adam Cole. He's one of the reps that's getting paid. Really, you could think of this almost as like Adam Cole's spreadsheet, right? I'm coming in, I see all of the information regarding his payout, bonus versus commission. I can also see what types of payments he's getting credit for, products, services, what his quarterly bonus looks like, if there's any special incentives he's getting credit for. If I'm curious and I want to drill into a payout, I can do that just by simply selecting any of those blue hyperlinks. This will pull open a payment detail page that will break down everything at a line-by-line detail level. I can see things like percentage rate, what the credit amount was, what the payout amount was, and then all this other detail I can see as an administrator. I can dig through and make sure it's accurate. A good point to bring up here too is that everything I'm showing you is done through, or I guess I should say is customizable by the administrator. You can easily, as an admin, go through and limit the amount of visibility your sales reps or sales team have within the tool. If you don't want to show them things like product family or stage or amount, you can hide all that detail and just show them the commission payout. So if there's any questions on this piece or on visibility around payment results, let us know. But this is really the first look, as I was saying, and then to really solidify this process as a whole, the last step is to do what we call going to payroll. Obviously, everyone has to send all of their commission payouts and numbers over to their payroll provider. And we give you an easy interface to do that with. This is really, to start, just a checklist. Make sure that you've done everything before you actually go to process that payroll. And then finally, the last step is to do what we call closing out a period. Now, I said earlier that Express runs on a month-by-month or period-by-period basis. You're noticing on the left-hand side here that this is just an example of a calendar year setup. Period 1 being January, period 2 being February, and so forth. I've already closed out 10 months worth of information. If I ever wanted to go back to those prior months, I would know that that information is locked down and is accurate. I wouldn't worry about any changes because the system runs its own audit trail. So I can see what effects or what adjustments were made during those open months because everything is tracked. Now, if I want to close out November, all I have to do is select the close current period and then select export payroll file. This is going to give me basically a payroll template that I can ship off to my payroll provider, whether it's ADP or Paychex or whatever system you're using. This file is a simple formatted file, CSV export, that gives you first and last name of your rep, employee ID number, and also the amount that they're owed for the period. You can add any fields you might want, but this is the idea to keep it simple to send off to your payroll. And at this point, you're essentially finished with the processing of commission, right? Just through that simple 5-step process, you don't have to worry about modifying and changing numbers and formulas and all that. And plus, you're going to get a huge benefit from an automated system solely based off of the auditability. You're not going to find that with Excel spreadsheets because there's no way to lock those down. Well, there are, but there's no way to run audit trails on them. So if there's any questions on processing or I guess administration from anything that we've touched on today, let us know, and we can definitely come back to that at the end of the webinar. The next phase that I want to walk through is going to be visibility. And this is something just at a high level that you're not really going to get out of Excel without buying other programs to add on to it to add visibility for. So the first piece of visibility that I want to talk to is going to be from a rep's perspective. Every rep that you have in your organization will have their own dashboard within the Xactly Express solution. And this dashboard is meant to do a few things. Obviously, it's meant to show them exactly how they're being paid, but also what they're being paid on, how they're doing towards their goals, what their plan looks like. It's all being encompassed in one main centralized area. So you'll see here, I'm looking at Adam Cole. We were just looking at him from an administration view. Now I can see from, if I'm Adam, if I'm logged in as into his dashboard, I can see my breakdown of payments. Right? I still get that same view, that $5,000. If I wanted to, as Adam, look and dig into that detail, I could do that. I could see the rates that I'm earning. I could see the credit amounts and the payout amounts. I could sift through all these other columns here if I really cared about the data components. All that detail is made available to me. I also get a look into how I'm doing to my goals. If you are measuring your reps to quotas and targets, we can show them that detail. Right? I see a monthly goal to services, a quarterly goal for products, an annual goal for products. Whether or not these things influence payout, it's still good to show your reps how they're doing towards specific targets. Really starts to get them into that competitive nature, make sure that they're staying on target and on task. We can show them different visibility into how they're doing to those contests. In this example, I'm showing a contest that relates to President's Club. If you hit 100% of your annual goal, you're going to win a 3-night trip to Hawaii, all expenses paid. In this case, this rep's only almost there, right? 97%. That's going to give them that extra push to make sure that they make it to the next level, which in this case, is what we call Chairman's Club. That's the next trip out, and that's going to be a longer stay, maybe somewhere else. Whatever your contest might be, this is the visibility that your reps are going to have. And then there's going to be things like, sales results, showing your reps how they're doing month over month, being able to look at trending and things like that. And what's really cool about this dashboard is that everything is meant for the rep to be able to create their own experience with commissions. Can I, as a rep, come in here and create my own dashboard? Maybe I don't care too much about my targets, but what I really care about is how I'm trending for payout month over month. So through this interface, I create a total payout pod. I select what type of payment I want to see. Maybe it's my bonuses. I want to know how much I've been paid over the last few months. So I select that time frame. Through this interface, a rep can create that new pod, and that'll show up on their dashboard. So this really allows the rep to personalize their pods and their dashboards, all the while still establishing trust that the calculations are being done accurately. Jim mentioned earlier shadow accounting. This is the biggest area that we see shadow accounting in. Where reps are wanting to know how much they're being paid. They're keeping their own spreadsheets to make sure all this detail is accurate. They don't have to do that anymore because it's all done here. And if they want a spreadsheet, all they have to do is select a detailed commission statement, which will open up a spreadsheet-like format that gives them a breakdown of how they're going to see this detail. Line by line, they can see any adjustments that were made. They can see all of the performance-based analytics, and even line-by-line detail that will show them how, what deals have closed, what rates they've received. So this is something that your reps can keep for their own safekeeping on their own dashboard, their own hard drives. So this is really the first look at visibility, but if you have any questions on the rep perspective, let us know, and we can definitely touch on that. The last thing I want to touch on today is going to be the ability for your upper management to get visibility, right? Maybe your executive team, maybe your finance team, maybe your CFO needs a report. What do they see? Well, for that perspective, I'm going to hop over. Actually, I'm going to hop back over into Salesforce, but I'm going to return as an administrator first. And doing that, as I had mentioned, we're natively built to Force.com, and because we're native to Force.com, we leverage that reporting engine. And so what I'm showing you here for those Salesforce users out there might look very familiar. These are just standard reports and dashboard technology used out of Salesforce. But what we're leveraging here is all the Express data. All that Express calculated data that we're showing you is being shown here. So obviously these dashboards can be staged to show different types of roles within the company. Maybe you have a finance dashboard, maybe you have a manager dashboard, maybe you just have an administrative dashboard that your comp admins need to see. The one I'm looking at here is what we would consider an executive dashboard. This is going to show me things like stacked rankings. I might be able to combine some Salesforce data with my Express data. Open pipeline, for example, compared to how my percent to goal is for my reps across different months. I can diversify this by market, right? Enterprise or emerging. I can even start to show different types of payouts and sales, right? How are my commission payouts relating to my sales, maybe by industry? Or perhaps I care more about sales versus payouts by region. It's up to you on what you're really looking to show your executive teams. But this starts to really show you cool data points because you start seeing how you're paying out in different areas. Or maybe if you're in the business of selling multiple products, you care about how your product mix is doing. Especially, a good example here is if you implement a new product and you really want to run different promotions around that. Is your compensation plan set up to actively incentivize your reps to go out and sell those new products? Obviously, they're going to be more comfortable selling the products they know and love, but if you want them to sell that new product, maybe we implement a spiff. And this type of report and dashboard can show you how your payouts are essentially trending to that specific new product. Another piece here is that all these fancy dashboards pictures you're seeing here are running off of standard reports. So obviously, if you wanted to see this at a high level, I could see how much I'm paying out, for example, by product. In this example, I sell quick start services, software, and training. I can see how much my reps are earning in commission. But I could also break all of that down, right? If I show out some of this detail, I could say, here's all of the different reps and accounts that make up those specific products. And all these reports are really easy to customize. So maybe this isn't the accurate report that you wanted to see or that your CEO wants to see. You as a comp admin can come in and easily customize this detail. Perhaps they want to break it out by payee. Well, the simple interface that I'm showing you here allows you to drag and drop that down. And all you have to do is rerun it. So in this example, I've made an adjustment to a report. And I'll hide some of this detail so you can see this a little bit easier. But now instead of seeing based upon what product is being sold, I'm seeing who is selling what. And I can see how much they're making in commission. So maybe this is calculating in Express is living now within this reporting engine. So you can modify and put together any type of report that you want in a fashion that's very easy, user-face friendly, all designed for a business user. So if there's any questions on this regarding dashboards, reports, visibility, or anything relating to what we've shown today, just let us know and we can definitely spend some time talking about that. But I'll hand things back over to Jim to finish up the Xactly portion of the webinar.
Okay, thanks, Mitch, and I appreciate you taking us through that. And hopefully what everybody's been able to see is, again, those things we talked about around, again, just to reiterate, that whole process of gathering the data. Mitch showed you how, with integration with Salesforce and ERP, let's say you're using QuickBooks or another ERP system, taking that information in, running those reports. Mitch just showed you how easy that is. You don't even have to run reports as a compensation admin or a sales ops person or a finance person. The reps can do it themselves, or the managers can do it themselves. You see how recent the information is, so it's up to date, it's on the cloud, it's there to be used, and so everybody knows up to the minute how they're doing. And then he showed you very easily how with a few clicks, as long as everything is set up and set up correctly, you've got a one-click calculation engine, so you're not taking hours, if not days, figuring out those calculations. So hopefully you've got to see, we talked about those pains. We talked about how to solve those pains, and Mitch took us through that. Just real quick about us here at Xactly, and specifically around what we just went through. These numbers represent a difference between companies that use an automated system, our automated system with Xactly, and versus use a spreadsheet. So I'm not going to go through all these, but you can take a look at them and see the performance of whether it be on lower sales turnover, so you're keeping your best reps, or shorter sales cycles, using an automated incentive compensation system versus using spreadsheets. That's what you see here. It's better performance and worthy of investment because you are spending a lot of money on your incentive compensation. And then lastly, a little bit about us here at Xactly. We are leaders in cloud-based incentive compensation management. We're growing very, very rapidly, and we have over 100,000 subscribers. We're really focused, and you can tell by how Mitch talked through this whole process and his knowledge level, that we're really focused, especially our folks who build our product and help the sales team and help you get up and running. How we're focused exclusively on incentives and compensation, so that is our expertise, and we are very good at it. And again, with folks like Mitch and other folks on our product team to build out those offerings that help you do manage incentive compensation better. And as a result, we're managing billions in compensation annually. So we hope this was helpful for you, and we hope we identified with some of those pains, and hopefully we have helped bring some solutions to you so that you can take control back of that incentive compensation and use your incentives, what they're used for, and that is motivating folks. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Ernie for a little Q&A session. So Ernie, back to you.
Thank you very much, Mitch and Jim, for that great content and your insights. And I'll open the Q&A session. Again, I encourage you in the audience to please ask questions on today's topic via the questions box in your GoToWebinar control panel. First question, I'll go ahead and direct to Jim. Can you still use Xactly if you don't have a CRM solution?
Yeah, I'll let Mitch a little bit more detail, but yeah, you can, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a lot of customers that are operating as a standalone environment. Obviously, Microsoft CRM is pretty big. There's, SAP. There's other CRMs out there that we integrate with. So as long as you have data and compensation structures, we can take that and automate it using the Express tool.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I'll start this question with Mitch, and Jim, feel free to jump in if you like as well. Someone's asking a question about compensation plans and accelerated plans. Say an employee has a plan with quotas and rates, and then say 3 months in the plan changes, as well as the quotas. How is that handled in the system?
Sure, that's pretty common. Within the system, I mentioned earlier on during the building session of the admin side, where we run on a month-to-month basis. So if you have plans set up at the beginning of January and then in April, quotas, rates, even new plan and product rules change, the plans themselves will stand different within each period. So January's compensation rules might heavily differ from April's compensation rules, and we can write that into the system. And because we lock down the system every month, those rules don't overlap. So any changes you make in April will not affect past months.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Kind of a, I don't know, I guess kind of a related question. Let's say there's a specific transaction, and then there's an exception to the rules. So let's say someone was not involved in a deal getting closed. Is there a way to go in and manage those so those existing rules are kind of overridden for a given deal?
Absolutely. It's what the concept that we run our crediting off of is filter logic. So for example, if there's 3 people that should get credit for one deal, but there's 1 individual that shouldn't, we can write a filter rule on their plan that says, do not pay this individual for XYZ product sold, or whatever the rule might be. But I guess short answer is absolutely, we can write rules in like that. And you can even modify the data. When we're looking at the processing page screen on the Manage Deals section, there's ways for you to exclude individuals by digging into that detail.
Okay, great. I'll direct this to you as well, Mitch. Can you make adjustments after the close of a period if you discover an error?
Yeah, that's a good question. Although we frown upon opening up prior periods, it is obviously a system, and there's definitely ways for us to help you there. So yes, we can open that back up for you to go back in and adjust. Typically, the process for that is you just contact us. We can show you what to do. Pretty quick process. A lot of times we'll see that, at the end of the month, maybe, for example, November, you're calculating November commissions. You accidentally close out too early, and then you realize you need to make an adjustment. Sometimes we'll open that back up and let you do kind of the reprocessing.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mitch. I've got a little bit of another technical question, so I'll direct this your way as well. Can you speak to the ability as far as security by user and specifically around the data they have access to and how that might impact the dashboards that people might be able to create?
Sure. It's a good question. So security, since we're built native to Salesforce, security is managed all through the normal Salesforce security settings. For those users that don't use Salesforce, we do it basically at a profile level. We give you certain access to the standard objects that we're showing within the Visualforce pages that I walked you through. But every single role that we have in the system, and which there are 4. There's a sales rep role, a sales manager role, sales administrative role, and a read-only access role. But each role gives you access to certain level of visibility. If you're a sales rep, for example, you're only allowed access to see your specific individual deals. If you're a sales manager, you might have access to your own deals, and if we allow you to through hierarchy setup, you can see anybody beneath you in your hierarchy. You won't see across teams. You won't see anything, from your subordinates if you're not supposed to. And if you're an administrator, of course, you have access to the full system. So security is heavily maintained through the Salesforce interface, and for those set up in Salesforce, it's just a pullover. We don't even need to adjust any settings. Everything's already set up for you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and direct the final question to Jim from the Q&A session. Can you speak to the greatest? You went over these in some detail. The expected benefits, but also the unexpected benefits that companies have realized by adopting your solution.
Oh yeah, sure. No, that's actually a really interesting question. Obviously, when you include and switch over to an automated system, what you find out is, obviously you reduce your errors, you reduce the time spent on it. What we have really found that specifically CFOs and controllers really get excited about, and maybe touch on a little bit, but one is the accuracy and speed of of getting that close done, and how accurate you are. So, for example, we had a company that closed within $8 of their accrual. I mean, and they closed in a day and a half after the quarter end. So you've got CFOs who get really excited about that stuff. I think, and the other piece along with that is the whole idea of that pressure around month end and quarter end close that seems to be really alleviated, and that reduction in pressure that just is felt by the finance teams at the end of the month. And I would say the other thing, and I can't remember, apologize, I can't remember if Mitch went through this or not, but is on the rep side, when they can use the commission estimator, they get really fired up. So they can look into a specific deal that's in Salesforce, and they can look at it and say, if I close this deal, I am going to make this much money. And that visibility into a specific deal and having that tangible, I'm going to make an extra $3,000 on this, is something that really hits home with folks. So yeah, you can save all the time you want. The hours are saved. The accuracy is there. Specific deal, they love that. So hopefully that answers the question that you were asking.
Oh, great. Thank you very much. That's a great answer.
And sorry, one more little quick piece on that. The other thing is we find out is people realize quickly how fast they can scale versus when they grow, they're going to have to run into issues if they keep in the spreadsheet. So being able to grow off of that is the other thing that we hear about a lot.
Great. With that, I'll go ahead and close the Q&A session. We'll coordinate with the speakers on any questions we did not get to today and get those questions posted on performative.com and the answers. In closing, a big thank you to Jim and Mitch for their time and insights. They're clearly thought leaders in their field and an excellent source of information on today's topics. Note in the post-webinar survey we prompted to take right after the webinar concludes, you'll have the opportunity to express your interest in being connected with Jim and or Mitch with just one or a few mouse clicks. Thanks again to our sponsor, Xactly. And then in closing, finally, a thank you to the audience for your valuable time. We hope to see you again soon at another performative event or online at www.performative.com. Make the rest of your day great, everyone.